Hello, it's time to put down my book on Clay Regazzoni and go live for our third live stream of 2024. Brilliant. Welcome aboard. Welcome to this live stream and looking forward to, as ever, your questions and comments. I'm going to start, as ever, with just a couple of things that occurred to me in the last day or two. One is this man. It's his birthday tomorrow. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but Frank Matic is a driver that in many ways characterized my love of motorsport as much as Jim Clark did. And I love that picture of Frank because there he is. I'm guessing that's 64 International 100, probably at Warwick Farm. He's about to do a parade lap in an open sports car, I think. You can see the Total Team logo there when the Total Racing Team was the mega team of all time. And for those that haven't heard of Frank Matic, he was an Australian driver, never raced outside Australia, apart from America when he did a bit of Can-Am and Formula 5000, never came to Europe. He did come to Europe to build his cars at the Brabham factory, but he never raced in Europe, and had the respect of Jim Clark, Bruce McLaren. Anyone who raced against him in the Tasman series came back thinking, wow, this guy is seriously quick. And he would have been really good in Formula One had he made the plunge, but he didn't because he had a family and he had a business and everything else, but he's just a phenomenal racing driver and had that amazing battle with Jim Clark at Lakeside in 65 when they just chipped away at the lap record and it ended at 54.9 to jointly really. I mean, they were both doing that lap time, just incredible. So yeah, fond memories of Frank. As I said, it's his birthday tomorrow, 25th of January in Australia. I think it's Australia Day too, isn't it? And sadly missed. And the other one, this just come in from Nigel Roebuck, who's a bit of a Jean Bera freak, as he would be, as any of us could be. Jean Bera, an unbelievable tiger behind the wheel in the 50s, always there, pushing hard, a man's man, stamp out the cigarette, get in the car, do the job. And here he is, unbelievably, doing an advertisement for Gillette. Nothing to say about that other than I'm blown away that Jean Bera is seen to be doing that sort of thing. There he is shaving, bottom left. Incredible, eh? There you go. So yeah, welcome aboard again, as I say, to the live stream. We always have a lot of fun on these and I just sort of indulge myself with little moments like that. But then we get down to the really important things like your questions and comments, much more important and I'm sure much more intelligent than anything I can say. So with no more ado, let's get into that. And the first is from Aaron Lee, who's one of our regulars. Hi, Aaron. Hi, Peter. What are the main driving factors behind the recent new tracks being street tracks rather than dedicated tracks? What needs to change to help dedicated tracks start to get a look in? And I wonder whether this is asked on the back of the announcement on Tuesday that the Spanish Grand Prix from 2026 onwards will be in Madrid on a slightly permanent but mainly street circuit by the big exhibition center there near the airport. Incredible location for getting in and out. And yet another sort of, you can see it now, another sort of Miami, Vegas shape racetrack, almost certainly. Lots of long straights, probably 3 DRS zones, the whole thing. A lot of talk in the press conference about the capacity that this circuit will have, 140,000 people, 150,000 people, which I'm always slightly bemused by, I have to say, because when Bernie famously once said the crowd at the racetrack, the paying audience at the racetrack is just the studio TV audience, it's not significant in the overall picture of things, I kind of understood that. Not sure that I liked the thought, but I understood it, that it wasn't a major part of the massive amounts of money that Formula One has to generate in order to be what it is. And so I'm slightly bemused by I wouldn't say constant, but there's a lot of energy behind the numbers of people that go to the races, 140,000, 150,000, 130,000. I mean, none of it is massive when you think about the 350,000 that used to go to the Nürburgring, or indeed the crowds at the US Grand Prix when it was at Indianapolis, well over 200,000 every Grand Prix we did there. But there's a lot of emphasis on this stuff, and you'd have to say, I mean, maybe they're saying, oh, there's a lot more people than we get into Barcelona. But again, how big a factor is that in the overall commercialization of Formula One? Yes, there's a certain amount of energy that comes from a large crowd, and that capacity crowd, record crowd graphic always looks good on TV. But I'm just slightly bemused by it, that's all. Anyway, they're going to have 140, 150,000 spectators in there. I'm sure they'll get them. It's great for Madrid. Takes me back, of course, to Jarama, the other Madrid Grand Prix venue, which I was lucky enough to attend several races at, actually. Good racetrack, a bit Mickey Mouse, bit too many tight corners. Although by today's standards, it's fairly open and quick, really. Some parts of it anyway. First went there in 72, watching Emerson win in the black and gold John Player Special Lotus 72, which sort of was his first really dominant win in that car with that livery. And all of a sudden, that helmet, those Firestone tyres, the Lotus 72 in its development that year, Martin Wade doing some great work on the car. It would just look like, well, he's going to be world champion straight away. Just everything looked right on that car. That was Jarama 72. I remember the whole thing being quite dusty. We stayed at the Barajas Hotel, I think it was. Yeah, probably named after the airport. And yeah, I can remember hanging out in 70, about 3 or 4 years later, hanging out with Luca Montezemolo by the pool there. Quite dusty and hot and nice and quiet, and just a really great Grand Prix. Used to really enjoy that Spanish Grand Prix at Jarama. I'm sure the Grand Prix at Madrid's exhibition centre will be completely different in atmosphere, be all noise and lights and state of the art, if that's what you want to call it. State of something anyway. So good luck, and got to congratulate Liberty, I guess, on getting that together. It's quite a big operation, and I guess it raises the other question. I'm going to get around to Aaron. I'm going to get around to your question in a minute. It raises the other question of what will happen to Barcelona, the circuit there that's been the venue, faithfully been the venue for many, many years now. And I guess, you know, the title of the Spanish Grand Prix now will, from 26 onwards, will be with Madrid, which is great for Madrid, great for Spain in some ways, great for, I'm sure, generation of yet more money and everything else. But if the Spanish Grand Prix, or if that race is now to continue in Barcelona, I guess it would only be as a Catalonian Grand Prix. There is that separatist issue in Spain, and the circuit falls into, as far as I think it does, it falls into the Catalonia area. Whether or not they've got the money necessary as a group, the Catalonians, that is, to continue to have that race at Barcelona, with a different title and fighting Madrid, I doubt very much. But in a way, I hope they do, because I think Barcelona had some really nice corners, and it was nice that they had taken that ridiculous chicane thing out, that wiggle woggle thing before the last corner as well, like in last year's race. And we're going to see that, of course, through to 2026. And it's a good circuit. It's in good corners. I mean, I've always said, coming out of turn 2, which is the second part of the chicane, initial chicane, and then how they set up for turn 3 is a really nice bit of road. And you can really see how Max or Lewis or Charles, or interestingly, it'll be interesting to see how Oscar is there this time around, how they differ from other drivers who take, you know, a lot more road there. And you can see how Max is saving road, if nothing else, with a very, very short corner there, and beautiful to watch. And it's one of the places that I always enjoy watching, and it'll be sad when that goes from Formula One. Anyway, getting on to your question, Aaron, of course, the reason Liberty put on these races like this, let's call them street circuits, is because having them in big cities, in their mind, makes a lot of sense commercially. It brings glamour to Formula One. It brings more people interested in Formula One. It brings in all the commerce and drama that comes from that international city, particularly if the airport is very near the racetrack. It's all to do with that stuff. It's not to do with the layout of the track at all, of course. And the track is a sort of, I guess, is like the second or third item on the list. Oh yeah, well, we'll have to fit it in there, and oh, there's a wall there. Okay, we'll fit it in over there, and we'll knock this down, and oh, there's a building there. We'll have to do a right-hander here. It's that sort of thing. And of course, in terms of us purists who love great corners and love great racetracks, thinking of the S's at Suzuka, or even that long, 4 apex corner in Turkey, you know, the opportunity to create corners like that when you're building a street circuit around an exhibition centre, very, very few and far between. So that's why they do it. They do it for commercial reasons, and they think the racing will survive okay because they'll just fill it with DRS zones and it'll be great for television. And anyway, all the onboard cameras and sound and everything else and the super slow-mos are getting better and better with every year, so they can compensate with that improvement technically. And And that's it. It's all money driven for sure. And I don't think anybody at the check signing level of Formula One hesitates before signing the check thinking, but is there a great corner on this circuit? I just can't imagine they say that. It just wouldn't even enter their peripheral vision, I think. So sad but true, I'm afraid. Okay, thank you very much for that one, Aaron. So now this is Marina Nora Rodriguez Huith, lovely name. Hi Peter, since you accidentally deleted your Jan 10 live stream and I didn't get to watch it, I hope you don't mind if I repost my questions. If you've already answered them, a short answer will do. Well, that's very kind, and I don't mind at all. I should remind you, if you haven't seen it yet, that we've got a new podcast out, and it can be, I've got to write, I'm not familiar with all these things, so I've got to read where it's actually available now. You can listen to our new podcast channel on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music. And there'll probably be a few more coming up in the next week or two. And it's called Short Corners. And it's going to be the live streams, edited live streams. It's going to be other interviews. I've got 4 items up there at the moment, all going pretty well. And there'll be a lot more as the years progress. So check out our new podcast, Short Corners with Peter Windsor. Hope you enjoy it. So yeah, in theory, if I do delete one again, hopefully I will have taken the sound out of it, and you'll be able to listen to that live stream on our new podcast. So hopefully that won't happen again. It kind of solves that problem with a bit of luck. So your next question, Marina, is, here's the first one. Max has said many times he doesn't like street circuits. Why do you think that is? What does he feel differently between those tracks and the traditional ones? Well, has he actually said he doesn't like street circuits, or has he said he doesn't like the modern version of street circuits? I think there's a difference. And he might well have been quoted out of context there, or they might have clipped the quote. I can't imagine Max doesn't like going into Casino Square at Monaco, or going to the swimming pool at Monaco, or indeed doing what he did to get the pole through Rascasse at Monaco. That's classic Max Verstappen. And I'm sure it would be almost impossible for Max to say, I don't like street circuits, if in his mind he was thinking of Monaco. But if he's thinking of the Vegases and the Miamis and all that, I kind of get it, because it's walls and it's fences and it's, it's not one 90-degree corner after another, but there's a bit of that. And it's, he's a racing driver and he loves his thrill. Can we use the word thrill still, or is it doesn't do enough to justify, to describe what Max feels when he's absolutely on the limit on a great corner? Probably thrill is probably not the right word to describe that, but whatever it is, he doesn't get it braking and turning into a 90-degree left or a 90-degree right. He gets it on corners like, as I say, going into Casino Square at Monaco, or indeed up to the S's at Suzuka, or Pouin, or Eau Rouge, or a lot of Copse Corner, Beckett's at Silverstone. So that's what he's saying, and I totally get it, because it's, those circuits, if you consider, and we had this subject last week, didn't we, about how high the standard of driving was in Formula One now. And I said, look, everybody's a late breaker these days, and everybody can basically get on the power quite early and hold a slide. And the standard of driving, therefore, given all the telemetry and all the information you have before you even get in the car, is pretty high if you've got good balance, eyesight, rhythm, and all the other things you need. And so, where's the challenge in that? I'm not saying Max doesn't do that better than everybody else, or Max and Lewis and a couple of others, but it's not really how he wants to display his skill. He wants to display his skill on a long corner on a decreasing radius, or he wants to do it on a corner where you're braking with load on the car, lateral load on the car, and you've got to slow it down just the right amount, and everybody's got understeer, and he's the guy that manages to have less understeer. That's what he wants. He just doesn't want bland corners that are the inevitable result of putting in street circuits in confined spaces that are there for commercial reasons. So I think that's what he means. I don't want to obviously say things out of bounds that he doesn't, not really knowing what he thinks, but I would suspect that is what he meant when he said I don't like street circuits. What he means is he doesn't like the modern type of street circuit, which is good to hear. I'm glad he said that, if he did say that. One more. I really like Oscar, says Marina. Do you think he's going to be in trouble for Lando next year? I know Lando's very good, but if Oscar can improve his time management, he could be a serious threat. Okay, well, Oscar, improve your time management. It's a bit odd, isn't it, how he did actually have the tyres go off where was it? Mexico, I think. He used the tyres up much quicker than Lando. And maybe, was it Austin too? He did the same thing? I can't quite remember, but he did. Yeah, it's a good point. But I've said several times, I think Oscar is the business, and he, purely because he does have this feel, he has a touch and a feel, which right up there with Lando's, in my opinion. But in addition to that, he has a feel for short corners and doing that pretty well. He's very self-critical, and he would say, oh yeah, I've got a long way to go or whatever. But to my mind, when he's on it and the car is pretty well balanced and he's got a good set of tires, I think he's right there with Lando. There's been a lot of talk about Lando over the winter, justifiably so. He's very, very good, but his corners are longer than Lando's, than Oscar's, and I think that is when you've seen Oscar going quicker than Lando and putting pressure on Lando, and Lando making the odd mistake. It's usually because Oscar's done a time using shorter corners, and Lando's sort of stretching his own limits of areas where he normally doesn't have to stretch them, and he's going over them because what else can he do? He doesn't have the same manipulation of the car into the corner as Oscar has, in my opinion. And so if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much about Oscar. Yes, tyre management, but getting to know how to run Pirellis is not an easy thing. I mean, they just basically designed to fall off the cliff. And some drivers who've been working with Pirellis for quite a long time have the ability to extend that moment and to enlarge that moment. But you've got to use the Pirellis for quite a long time to really get a feel for how to best limit the damage when they do go off the cliff, because that's what they do. And it's not great for a racing driver either to have to deal with that as one of his issues. It'd be much nicer to be talking about acceleration runs, braking runs, turn-in point, all that stuff. But a lot of it is, as you say, is just tyre management. How do we get these tyres to last longer? And it's pretty boring, really, but you've got to do it. And it's a function of racing in 2024. The Pirellis are not designed to do a full Grand Prix distance by any means, and in fact they're going the other way on a pretty regular basis. And they do that. They're doing it was interesting. They're doing quite a lot of it in Formula 3 and Formula 2 now, and Pirelli are quite pleased with the fact that they're creating models and tyre simulations, if you like, where the same thing is happening there, and it's good training for when the tyres completely collapse in Formula 1, you can completely collapse in Formula 3. And a friend of mine was talking to Juan Pablo Montoya the other day, whose son races in Formula 3, and Juan Pablo said, look, first 10 laps of a Formula 3 race, forget about racing, just drive around, just cruise around, and then hopefully a few other people have abused their tyres, and then you can start racing on a half reasonable set of tyres. I mean, that's not really motor racing, isn't it? Certainly not for young kids. And it's a shame. It's a shame that it's gone that way. You said that was one more. Okay, last one. No problem at all. Love these questions from Marina. Last one. You often talk about how drivers need to feel the surface of the road. I came across this on the internet. Sorry, too long. Please see below. Okay, next one. Charles says he prefers a bigger seat because he likes to move a bit while racing, because that's how he feels the track. Interesting. Thank you so much. Bye. Well, that is interesting, isn't it? I didn't know that, hadn't read that, hadn't seen that. But yeah, it is. Every racing driver will say they feel the track through the seat of the car and through their back and their buttocks and the bottom of their arms and the wrists and everything else. Every racing driver will say that. But of course, some racing drivers actually do feel the surface of the road there and others don't. And I think Max is another. As I've said several times, you often hear him talking on the radio on a Friday, this doesn't feel quite right, my helmet's not doing this, my helmet's moving too much, or my hands are here. There's something to do with how he's feeling in the cockpit. He doesn't feel 100% comfortable, and it's cramping his ability to feel the surface of the road. And that feeling of the surface of the road, obviously it's a phrase that's easy to say. As a concept, it's incredibly difficult to understand, because you could say, well, you're feeling the surface of the road through the steering wheel when we're driving in a road car. But we're not. We're actually feeling a very servoed steering that's damped by a lot of things coming through the suspension, coming through the tires. Everything is softened. And we're not feeling the surface of the road. We're feeling reactions of the car to the surface of the road. And what we're talking about are drivers like Charles saying, I need to feel everything there. I need to feel the grip. I need to feel the grip level changing whenever it changes in minute detail. And they have that ability. As I say, it's almost impossible to pinpoint exactly where they're feeling that on their body, but it'll be for sure, a lot of it will be on the small of the back. And again, that's another reason we don't have the same thing on a road car, because we're not sitting in a position where the small of the back is subject to that. So next question is, what about the older racing cars when they sat more upright, or indeed the trend now towards more upright seating positions anyway? Well, the answer is lower thighs leading to the small of the back and all that. And that is definitely an area where some drivers will be more sensitive than others. Jacques Villeneuve used to take forever to get in the car, to get comfortable in the car. But I'm not sure. I think that was because he wore very baggy overalls, and it was difficult to tighten the belts without a crease generating in an area where he could feel it. But again, it comes under the same heading. He didn't want a crease in the overalls in an important area of his senses. And that perhaps more than anything highlights the importance of a racing driver's ability to feel the surface of the road. So good question. We go on about it forever. I'd love to get Rob to talk about that as well, the surface of the road and what that actually means to him. Excuse me. Yeah, that was that one. Let's have a look at another one. So this is from Abhishek Rajivan. Peter, can you tell me about Rory Byrne and his design style? How does he stack up against Adrian Newey? And hey, do you think these two could ever team up and create something awesome together? Yeah, I mean, Rory is Rory lives in Thailand now, so I don't see much of him. But the Rory I knew and know is, you always got the impression that he was a little bit chaotic. He's a South African, so he spoke like this, and you'd say, in the days of the Tolman Hart, when they were struggling and the Hart engine was not particularly reliable, Hart turbo engine was not particularly reliable, and the car was built on a tiny shoestring, you'd go up to Rory and you'd say, so Rory, how's it going? Have you managed to get any weight off the car yet? And he said, oh, well, we're trying very hard to do that. But Peter, I got to tell you, it's not an easy thing. It's, we get rid of this and we have to put on that. And then we get rid of that and we have to put on this. And he would talk like that. And he seemed, when you spoke to him, it was difficult to imagine that he was this great engineer, which he obviously is and was back then. He was very simple and very slightly chaotic, as I say, in the way he was, but he produced some great cars. He produced the F2 car, and then obviously when he was with Michael at Benetton, that's when, maybe it was under the heading of Ross Brawn that he got a discipline that took him to another level, and ever since he's been with, I think it's ever since they went to Ferrari, I think he's been with Ferrari ever since, isn't he? I think he's still on a Ferrari contract. And I think his talent is sheer practicality and knowing what is feasible and what isn't. And I'm sure he would have had an input at Ferrari at the beginning of 2022 about bouncing, because Ferrari actually didn't have as much bouncing in the car as Mercedes and, say, McLaren. And credit to that to Rory Byrne for sure. Rory and Adrian. Rory is an aerodynamicist and Adrian's an aerodynamicist. So whether two negatives equal a positive, I don't know, or two positives equal a negative, I don't know. Adrian can also completely design a car, as can Rory. So yes, they'd probably be pretty good together. I imagine Rory would be the sort of blunt edge of everything that Adrian wants to do, and would say, well, we haven't got the time to do that, Adrian. We've got the money here and we've got the date there. Let's just get on with it. Adrian's got people around him or currently who obviously say that to him as well, so he doesn't need Rory to do that. But I don't know. I think the most we could ever imagine or hope for would be to sit down with those two over dinner and just have them chat together and listen to how the conversation went and what they would talk about and what sort of things they find interesting. But yeah, Rory, top man, and incredibly wise of Ferrari to have worked with Rory for so long and had him there. He's a really, really good guy. And a classic Formula One racer, works hard, works like a dog and never gives up and does things very quickly. I think that's the other thing about Rory, very quickly. Very good in that area, speed-wise. So yeah, good question, thank you. Cosmos Trek. Now Cosmos Trek very kindly also put up a couple of questions saying he had a very good podcast. He'd found a good podcast to do with Gilles de Ferran and encouraging people to look for that. So go out there on the cyberspace and Google podcast Gilles de Ferran. I'm sure you'll find it. In the meantime, here's another question, basically saying the same thing. This is all post yet another street circuit coming onto the Formula One calendar. Peter, street circuits are a waste of money. They end up spending the same amount if they build a great permanent circuit. They could make money from multiple days a year. And that was always Bernie Ecclestone's philosophy. That's why Bernie didn't do a lot of street circuits. As tempting as it was to want to be in the absolute hub of economy and money and people and energy, he stayed away from it. And he built these permanent circuits in the middle of nowhere, getting local governments to pay for them. And that was his way of doing it. His philosophy was, once it's on TV, it doesn't really matter where it is. It's like, you're watching a Western with beautiful pictures of Colorado mountains in the background. The whole thing says filmed and produced at Pinewood Studios, England. Bernie's philosophy was exactly the same. It doesn't matter where it is. It's the only thing that matters is the TV angles and the cars and the racing and the great corners. I say great corners because I'm not sure it wasn't that high on Bernie's thing. But having said that, at least he was a racer and he did like fast corners, I think, and decent corners. And he always made the point, Bernie, that street circuit, exactly as you're making the point, Cosmos, he actually made the point that street circuits end up costing more probably than permanent circuits, because having to rebuild them every year is a drama. And then on top of that, you've got all the local negativity that comes, and you have to overcome that every year, and you're having to start to pay to get through that barrier as well. And they end up being very expensive races to run. I mean, Melbourne have got a pretty nice compromise there, haven't they? They've got the Albert Park, which doesn't really disrupt the traffic that much. It disrupts it, but not that much. But, Singapore, yeah, Singapore's a different country, and everybody basically does what they're told, but there's a lot of disruption in Singapore. And, yeah, it's Madrid. Because it's out near the exhibition centre, it won't be too bad. Again, it'll be away from, there's a big motorway that runs right next to the exhibition centre, so that won't be affected, I don't think. It'll all be around there, so there won't be that much disruption. But as you say, it's the cost of doing that circuit and then rebuilding it every year. Probably, as I say, if they built a permanent circuit somewhere in Toledo or somewhere like that, it would be probably cheaper in the long run and have all the facilities you need. And that's another thing about street circuits, of course, the facilities are always slightly compromised as well. I've got to say, when we were doing the F1 exhibition in Madrid this summer, there was, prior to the opening, there was quite a lot of noise about the Grand Prix was going to come to Madrid in this area. We all kept quiet about it, obviously, but that's when, I think, by then the talks were well underway, and having the Formula One exhibition there was a logical thing, given that Madrid is going to take this incredibly important role now in the World Championship calendar. So yeah, and using the circuits. I can't imagine that Bahrain or Abu Dhabi have got their money back yet in terms of what that area was in the case of both circuits and what it is now. The cost of getting it from A to there to B, they'll never get it back. But they're doing a pretty good job of making the circuits work during the year, whether it's drag racing, rock concerts, whatever it is, leasing it out to manufacturers for track days and things. They do a pretty good job with that. Of course, you can never do that, as you say, with a street circuit. So another reason. I'd be interested to see if Liberty do go in the way of doing one permanent circuit now. It'd be interesting to see if they ever do a new permanent circuit in their ownership of Formula One. So, Karma in Babylon. Hi PW. In a drinking game, how many shots could you down before Crofty I think you mean the Sky guy, finishes saying Visa Cash App RB. Next question coming up. Yeah, not being a guy that listens or watches Sky, I don't have a lot of feel for that other than, yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Visa Cash App Red Bull. I think that's what the actual Alpha Tories are now called, aren't they? The Visa Cash Apps or something like that. How ridiculous. Just so my understanding, the first car not to be called a car at all was the 1974 McLaren M23, raced by Emerson Fittipaldi and Denny Hulme, which that year was just known as a Texaco Marlboro Ford, or just a Texaco Marlboro, and the team was Marlboro Team Texaco. So that was the first precedent of that, and I think we've got it back again now with, I think it's back with Sauber and also with Red Bull now, all this naming it after a sponsor. So yeah, it's Visa Cash App. I just hope that their Cash App is better than their credit card app, because to my mind that is the most unusable thing ever. I don't know how many hours I've wasted trying to get to the bottom of that, but anyway, I'm sure they know what they're doing. He says. So okay, Karma in Babylon. This is your serious question, I think. I've read much about the Montjuic Park circuit and now the infamous 75 race weekend. Seems opinions varied wildly about this circuit. Your memories and thoughts on yet another street circuit? Well, I think we've kind of covered the whole business of yet another street circuit, and I'm with you guys. I'd love to see old style street circuits like Montjuic Park. We're never going to see those again. Too quick, too dangerous. But if not, I'd rather see permanent circuits, an investment in permanent circuits. As I said, to me, instead of building that track in Vegas, they should have built a rendition of the Nürburgring out in the desert there, not far from Vegas, 15-mile lap, jumps, everything, safety, runoff areas, all the things you need to make it a 2024 spec Grand Prix track. Wouldn't that have been brilliant? That would have been Liberty's legacy, building this Nürburgring. And that would have been used every day of the year, absolutely, without a doubt. And you've got the space to do it there. You've got the money there for sure to do that. And you could have had a huge rendition of the Sport Hotel, and you could have built the castle on the mountain, or build a mountain with a castle on the top. Why didn't they do that? Let's go back to the Nürburgring. And the proper Nürburgring, not that, South Circuit thing. Not even the South Circuit. The South Circuit was great, not that new one that they've got. So, yeah, that's what they should have done. And so you know my views on that. 75, well, Montjuic Park. Yeah, first race I went there was 73, pretty spooky place in terms of the guardrail and the height of the guardrail and how quick it was. After the start, it went over a brow where the cars got a little bit airborne, then very fast downhill section to a hairpin left. And then it went through some quite tight medium speed corners to the bottom of the hill. And then you began the climb up the hill, and they were all fast sweepers, long, very quick left-hander leading back onto the straight again. Very quick, second half of the lap, really seriously quick corners, 120 mile an hour stuff. And it was a great circuit. The drivers all loved it that I ever spoke to. Incredibly demanding. Chris Amon was incredibly good around there, particularly in the Matra. Woof. Carlos was really good around there as well. But yeah, I was there in 73 and I was there in 75 when that accident happened. And I was down at the hairpin, on the outside of the hairpin, doing my lap chart, as you do. And I just saw dust and debris. Something hit the guardrail, and it was pretty obviously a massive shunt. And went up there, and after the race actually, and very sad sight. Now, the problem was, and it was not only Barcelona, but it was other circuits as well. The problem was the way the Armco barriers had been mounted and secured, the uprights in the ground, and the way the Armco was bolted onto the uprights. And for Armco to work well, as you obviously know, it has to be very firm. And the whole idea of Armco is you hit it and you basically bounce off it. But if there's any give in it, or the Armco splits, as it did in the case of Francois Sever and Marcus Hottinger at Watkins Glen, for example, then it's a terrible situation. And that was what the drama in 73 was all about, with Jackie Stewart not wanting to race because of the Armco, and literally going round and starting to bolt the guardrail together. And it's what it was in 75 when Emerson Fittipaldi said that this circuit is not safe enough, and he did one lap, didn't he, as the world champion, and then stopped. And I think, you know, I think he was right. A lot of people were critical of Emerson, and he had a vision, as did Jackie Stewart, of what the safety level should be. So that's another thing, you know, when it's a street circuit, all that stuff has to be rebuilt every year, and so there's obviously very high standards now of licensing for any circuit, and there's a tremendous number of inspections. So that sort of thing wouldn't happen today, but back then it did happen. And yeah, Barcelona was just quick. But my memory is of a great race. You know, you're in the middle of Barcelona. It was a lovely place, Montjuic Park, lovely mountain in the middle of Barcelona city, and there was a great paddock area there where all the teams were kind of crammed together, and you could just walk from one team to another. And there was a great atmosphere. Yeah, everybody, as I say, everybody got into it, and it was a classic, you know, Spanish Grand Prix. That was one of the few races where Jim Clark actually lost his cool. The '68 Formula 2 race there, he was taken out by Jackie Ickx at that first hairpin, T-boned by Ickx, who just basically braked too late or nerfed Jimmy off, and Jimmy was absolutely livid about it and was you know, very, very angry with Jackie Ickx. And I think, you know, they were okay after the race when they chatted, but at the time Jimmy was very upset. And it's interesting, there's still some people that say, you know, maybe there was some damage done to that Lotus 48 that they never really got hold of in that shunt, and that's led to what happened at Hockenheim, because it was left rear, of course, it was the left rear tyre at Hockenheim, we think, but never known absolutely for sure what happened there. So yeah, George Follmer finished third, didn't he? I think, was it that race? No, it wasn't that race. But George Follmer made his debut in Formula One, I think, in that race, from memory, in the Shadow, American. Don't know why I'm suddenly thinking of that. But yeah, very good place. But sadly, those days are over. I went to Montjuic Park not so long ago, actually, just drove around it, walked around. It hasn't changed that much. You can still see the basic layout of the circuit. If you want to see what the lap was like, you can go there. Never been to Pedralbes, which is the other Barcelona Formula One venue. Must do that one day. Thanks for that question. Very good. Michael Delorso. Who is your surprise team for 2024? Hearing any whispers besides McLaren optimism? I think Visa Cash App might go quite well. The Red Bull B team. I think they'll go quite well. I'm surprised, you know, whether they'll be right up there. I think they could be. And the other one I mentioned last week, you know, it'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Because I think Haas have got two very good racing drivers, and you can't deny the pace of Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg and how good they are and how professional they are. And if everything's a bit calmer there now, and the car's half reasonable, it needs to be half reasonable, I think they'll go pretty well. I think they could be a bit of a surprise. Yeah, no, that's it really, I think. AlphaTauri, as they used to be, and Haas. Carbonara, great name. Hello, Peter. Do you have the opportunity to show engine parts from the V10 era? Craig Scarborough might have some bits. He keeps buying odd bits off eBay, you know, whenever there's some sort of fire sale somewhere. Valves, no, he doesn't buy valves, pistons maybe. Well, we'll ask him. We're going to be doing some stuff with Craig when the new cars start to turn a wheel, not necessarily every time they do something on the internet with some livery launch, but when they actually start turning a wheel, or when we see proper racing cars being launched in a launch environment, then I'll be doing some stuff with Craig, so we can ask him that one. Yeah, V10s, great engines, aren't they? Wonderful. I've got a piston here from a Cosworth DFV V8, if that's of interest. Where's that? Is that here? Up there somewhere, I think so. 1 second. Yeah, this is the piston from Carlos Reutemann's 81 Monaco Grand Prix winning Williams Cosworth. There you go. Not bad. And I've got a nice little model of a Renault, I think it's a V10. Yeah, this is it's a nice little model of a Renault V10 circa 1992, I guess. Cool, eh? Look at those manifolds. And of course that engine was famous because it was the first engine to have pneumatic valves, and that was that allowed them to get the revs that they did. They would never have done that with mechanical valve springs. That was a big breakthrough by Renault for that engine. So yeah, there we go. But yeah, we'll ask Scarbs about V10 bits. Right, just going back to, I got a super chat here. Let's put this one up. Thank you very much. From Yun Jabran No Kum 5 Nego. Williams seem on a steady trajectory of transforming the way they work end to end, seemingly developing a skunkworks ethos. Thoughts? Skunkworks, as in North American building parts for NASA on the space program, indeed before that, aircraft in general, was all to do with secrecy and, you know, what's going on behind those walls. I'm not aware of Williams necessarily adopting that skunkworks type attitude, but then again, I haven't recently asked to go and see them, so I can't really say. Maybe don't know why, because they are who they are. They carry the Williams name. They're a Mercedes customer team. There's nothing wrong with being as open as possible in Formula One these days. It's probably better to be open than closed. And are they going to come up with technology that is so secret and so advanced that it has to be kept absolutely secret until the last possible moment? I very much doubt it. So I do think that we're seeing a lot of changes at Williams for the better compared with where it was a few years ago, and the team is a much better team now, and it looks to be very well run, and they've got people there that seemingly are prepared to bankroll it to the next level, and there's a lot of good things going on. I actually don't have that much feel for the people there, because most of the people I know are no longer at Williams, and they're all good people. So I mean, I can't really say that much, but I'm not saying that the ones they have now aren't even better or as good. So yeah, I'm going around in circles a little bit because I don't really have a lot of feel for it. But I mean, maybe they're going to be one of the teams as well that'll be really good. There's no denying the pace of Alex and Albon, and I think Logan Sargent did a very good job last year in terms of being not far away from Alex. Obviously the racing wasn't quite as successful as qualifying sometimes, but he's definitely got talent and potential. So and that whole American footprint is not a bad thing to have at all. So yeah, pretty good. That's it. Not very constructive thoughts, but maybe I'll have a few more when the season's underway. MBM. Hi Peter, can you give us an insight on Nelson Piquet's driving style? I know the guy was a genius when it comes to develop or setting up a car, but there's little information on his driving style. Soft touch, Lando Norris-esque. I'll wait a bit. Sorry, I'm just dealing with some culinary stuff. I'll wait. Yeah, thanks. I'll wait for dinner afterwards. I'll cut this short fairly soon. Yeah, Lando Norris touch level, definitely, if not more. I mean, great feel, but long corners, absolutely long corners, sort of not to the extent of Carlos Sainz, but definitely longer than even Lando Norris's, I'd say. So turned in quite late, long corners, Jenson Button-esque really, and very clever. When you say setting up a car, I wouldn't agree with that. I think he was pretty good at getting the car well balanced for the way he wanted to drive it. But whether he actually had a car that was then as quick as a racing car physically could be driven, I doubt very much. And I think Nigel was quicker and can get more out of a car. So that immediately, there was a difference in setup there. And I think Nelson was more about clever tricks and ideas than he was about being a genius on setup. And I think that was a native cunning that he had. Greg Siddle, Pee-wee, his mate, was very good at expanding that, as were Bernie and Gordon Murray, and they worked together really well. But I don't think it worked very well for him at Williams or Benetton or Lotus for that matter. And there was less you could do then in those subsequent days anyway. But yes, it was more, Formula 3 days, he'd have a lot of tricks up his sleeve for sure. And he took that right through into certainly all the Brabham years. And there was a lot of stuff going on. We know the cars were underweight a lot in qualifying, and Nelson was very good at that. He always had underweight helmet, underweight overalls. Probably didn't have anything in the fire extinguisher. There's a lot of stuff going on with Nelson, and quite difficult to keep up with it at some time. And he did have quite long corners. So car for car, circuit for circuit, setup for setup, Nigel was quicker for sure. But Nelson had a lot of very, very good qualities as well. And there's no doubt, a charming guy, sit down, have dinner with him, have a laugh. He was a very funny bloke, and Frank just loved him. Frank felt much more at ease, Frank Williams this is, with Nelson than he ever did with Nigel. And so that was one of the reasons the whole thing was such a mess, because when Nelson started to say to Frank, what's going on? Why is this English guy going so quickly? You must be giving him special engines. Frank was kind of very unsure of how to handle the situation, because the answer was, in reality, Nigel was going quicker. And so, but it was a difficult thing for him to say to Nelson. So yeah, Nelson PK. Justin Pepitone, any significant changes in the tyres for 2024? I think we've seen the 24 compounds being tested, haven't we, fairly rigorously in the last, from Mexico onwards, I think. They were doing a lot of testing. I think it's only compounds. Don't think there's going to be anything dramatic in terms of construction or strength of the tyre. The stronger tyre is there and it's doing a good job. They're just working on compounds, I think, and they'll probably have a quicker compound, but they'll also have more compounds falling off the dreaded edge. On the basis that's got to be good for racing because it's more pit stops. Don't get me started on that one. Seamus says tyres are spelt tyres. Tyres mean you lose energy. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm sure the Americans would beg to differ there. And they would probably say, we've been building good race tyres, TIRES, as long as the Europeans. Think about Firestone and Goodyear. Hi, Peter. What do you think about the new, this is from Harsh Card. What do you think about the new Toro Rosso name? Well, this Visa Cash App special. I mean, if they've had the word special after it, I quite like it. It could be like one of those indie things, the Dean Van Lyon special and the Red Bull special. It should be the Visa Cash App special. That sounds all right then, but just the Visa Cash App. Honda, Red Bull engine technology. Yeah, all too much, isn't it? I mean, on the plus side, there's a lot of good big American corporate companies seem to be coming into Formula One now, don't they? And I think I've just discovered the agency that's doing a lot of this work, and it's called, where are we? It's called Creative Artists, doing a good job apparently in bringing a lot of USA brands to Formula One and to Red Bull. So yeah, other teams will think, why isn't the money coming to us? But Gene Haas would be thinking that, wouldn't he? I'm a big American team. Why aren't they with me? Good question. This is from Harble Warble. I always wanted to say that. If someone is going to build a new track, don't let anyone develop it around it lest they end up getting noise complaints like Laguna Seca. Yeah, well, that's another point, isn't it? You put it in the middle of nowhere and you get all the farmers complaining that the cows are no longer producing milk or whatever, which I think was the case, may still be the case at Barcelona, the current Barcelona circuit. And yeah, always going to be people that complain. But I think more people complain if it's in a city with the disruption, if they start building the track 3 weeks before the race or whatever it is, than in the country where it's just a group of presumably farmers or people like that that you do a deal with. It's a bit simpler and more straightforward, isn't it? Or not? I think the complexity of a city race is more than I would like to take on. Dave, hi Peter, thanks for making Wednesday nights more enjoyable. Oh, thank you very much, Dave, it's very kind. I enjoy them anyway, I hope you guys do too. I mean, in the dark a lot of the time as to where we're going, but Harble, it's disgusting what the neighbours are trying to do to Laguna Seca. This is from Super 23. Yeah, well, yeah, all good things come to an end, I suppose these neighbours would say, wouldn't they? Which is not true. They should continue forever. Laguna Seca, one of the great racetracks. Brilliant circuit. Jim Clark's raced there even. Lotus 19. Okay, this is a who remembers when question. Who remembers when St. Petersburg was announced in 2021 as the 2023 Russian Grand Prix? Good question. Actually, this comes under the heading of comment, doesn't it? Good comment. Rhetorical question. Absolutely. Yeah, please advise. Yeah. Actually, I suppose in fairness, we could say, well, what happened to the Korean Grand Prix of Bernie? You know, what was that all about? Or the Indian Grand Prix for that matter. Samus, Harama was trying to update and use the chap that made Zandvoort Formula One spec. Why not Harama? Yeah, because as I say, it was great and could still be great if they did that and spent a lot of money on it. I don't think they need to, but if they want to do it for all their pit complex and everything else, near the airport, the whole thing. But more tempting for Liberty is to be in that big exhibition centre, the big companies. You know, it's prestigious. It's Madrid, downtown almost. There's a Corte Inglés, huge department store just across the road. You know, the whole thing's got a buzz to it. And more room to have their 150,000 spectators as well. As vital as they are to the overall economy. Martin Stevenson. Street circuits are popular, I suspect, because of the higher level of exposure in terms of hard walls and absence of runoff. Yeah, and crashes and spectacular, incidents against these concrete walls and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah, whether there's more exposure there than there would be on a circuit like, say, Silverstone, I don't know. I mean, as I say, the photographic technology now in Formula One with super slow-mos and the onboards is so good that you can really make anything spectacular, to be honest, in my opinion. And so that side of it isn't really an argument in terms of for or against street circuits, because you can do whatever you want with cameras these days. Got another. I think we got another super chat here I need to get onto. I'll do this one. A lot of talk about street circuits. Everybody's quite fired up about this. Interesting, isn't it? Daniel Yu, street circuits have inferior racing but superior weekend experiences. Good. Let's face it, parties and accommodations are a big part of experiences. Yeah, but I keep getting people saying, oh, I love going to Spa. It's always wet and I roll around in the mud and we get soaking wet and we love it and the hotels never work and everything's rubbish, but it's the greatest weekend of the year. We camp and we do this. You know, there's so many different types of things. As I say, it's all to do with money. You know, the big money is with the people that do stay in the big hotels and spend a fortune, and that's what Liberty are focusing on. They're not focusing on the people that want to sit on an earth bank on the outside of Pouhon Corner in the rain, or Suzuka for that matter, in the rain. So that's what it is all about. You're absolutely right. It's about all that corporate ticket. So I'm just going to whiz to the top of the chat thing to see where this other super chat is. Because if somebody's kind enough to do a super chat for me, I should be at least responsible enough That Skunkworks question was a super chat, by the way. That's interesting. Thank you very much. Where is this one? That was a yellow one. Can't see it at all now. Typical. There it is. Here we go. Here we go. Thank you. I like this system now. It's good, isn't it? Yellow. Hi, Peter. Where do you see K-Mag in 24? Is he short or long corner driver? Is Brands Hatch Indy's fast left to long right onto the main straight a good series of corners to see long versus short corner drivers? I see K-Mag as, a pretty short corner driver. Lots of feel and touch. I think he's a bit undisciplined at the moment. Sounds very condescending, but I think he should do a few days with Rob Wilson just to brush up. But I think he is he's definitely on that side of the fence. Nico, I'd say, is on the slightly longer corner side of the fence. But K-Mag, I think, at his best, is very, very good. From watching him over the years, I think he's really good. And I'm hoping that the new Haas regime will bring the best out in him again, and we see that. Now, Brands Hatch Indy, left to right. No, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's kind of not the left, but going into the right, which is an increasing radius and then negative camber coming into clearways, what used to be called clearways. That definitely is an area where you'd see if Max Verstappen was in a Formula Ford 1600 with no wings against Chris Middlehurst in a Formula Ford 1600 with no wings, you'd see Max probably just sort of half a car length inside Chris there, doing a really nice job at the release of the brake pedal pressure as he's loading up the car for the second part of Kidney, I think it used to be called, or is called. And so it's not a bad place, that actually. That's better than that section at Silverstone we were talking about last week. Turns whatever it is, 4 and 5 before the hairpin leading onto the first long straight, whatever that is. But that section is quite good, partly because of the camber as you're coming out, and partly because of the increasing radius, which is also very good. And if it didn't have that camber, it would be kind of inviting everybody to do what Max is doing. But because it's got that camber, a lot of people tend to stay wider than they maybe could on that last part. And that's where a Max would do really well, I think, just there. He'd be good at Paddock Bend too, of course. Very good. I'd love to watch Max do Paddock Bend in what car? Euro F3 car, I think, would be good. He'd be brilliant through. Imagine, I'd go there all day and just watch him drive around in the Euro F3 car, which don't exist anymore, I don't think, do they? The way they used to be. And in the Yuri Vips era and Mick Schumacher era, and watch Max through Paddock. It'd be cool. I watched Carlos Sainz there in one of those. He was really good. A little bit late apex, but unbelievable car control and commitment. Really, really good. Right, this is that one. Now back to where we were. I think this is a bit easier than it used to be because it's all shaded, the stuff I've... Warble says, based, Sky's not very good. Yeah, well, I don't know. There's some very good people there, but I just think it's such a wasted opportunity not to be filming more stuff and just doing the standard, short interviews and things. And they could be doing so much more and putting it out there. And I just wish they would, not only F1, but F1 and F2 and F3 as well, behind the scenes. I mean, those poor F3 guys who are spending, 1.6, 1.8 million a year. What do they get? They're not even allowed in the Formula One paddock. They get the live feed, obviously, whatever country they're living in. But what's happened over the winter? How many film crews have been over to various countries interviewing all the drivers in F3, getting the fans all excited about them? None that I know. So that's my objection to it. There's just not enough of it and not enough behind the scenes stuff. Donald McLaughlin. Don McLaughlin. I think this is is one of my heroes, I think. Hi, Peter. Always good to listen. Can you send a message to Sky Sports to allow crowd cheers to come to the TV audience? The only track where I ever hear crowd is at Silverstone. Well, I'm not sure. I've got a mate who works there, so I will mention it to him. Yeah, it'd be kind of good if they're going to on and on about all these crowds that they're going to have at races, 150,000 people. Well, let's hear the crowds. They love all those things when you see them before the race, don't they? And they said the cameraman's waiting there, waiting for the director in his headset saying, okay, you're live. And the cameraman's already got everybody to go 1, 2, 3, whoa, like that, you know. We've had enough of that, I think. Let's get a little bit more natural stuff. But yeah, noise, actual real noise of them actually really cheering or doing whatever they do. Booing? Do we want booing? I don't know. I think booing's probably justified if I agree with it. There you go. So this is from Suraj. Hi, Peter. I'm a huge fan of yours from Chennai. Thank you very much. India. What's your take on revival of the Indian Grand Prix and your views of Narain Karthikeyan and Karun Chandhok, who drove in Formula One? Well, I'd love to see the Indian Grand Prix back on the calendar again, and I think it should never have come off the calendar. It was only a question of money, and I think it's a very important country to have in Formula One, on the Formula One calendar, and that's why I'm on the UMA, the United Motorsports Academy board, because I'm really keen to try to generate interest in Formula One, particularly from an engineering point of view, which the Indian people are so into, and to really revive the whole thing. So I really hope India's back on the calendar. It was a great Grand Prix, a bit like Long Beach. I couldn't believe when it was off the calendar. Why? I mean, it doesn't make sense. It's such a great and important country to have in Formula One. And it was a pretty good circuit too. I know there were a few issues with land subsides and stuff, but you can get over all that, no problem. What's the issue? So yeah, that was disappointing. And Narain Karthikeyan was very quick. I saw him racing in Formula Asia. I did half a year out there in Formula Asia when Brian Saunders was winning a lot of races, and Narain was racing, and he was very reflexy, very quick, very brave. He was what he was throughout his Formula One career, and he was all those things and a little bit more there. He's a fast driver, totally fearless, and would just get on with it. Nice guy. A bit untidy as a driver, I think you could say. It wouldn't be, one lap he'd have the right rear just touching the white line, next lap he'd be just over, next lap he'd be back again on the, safer side of the white line. And it was a bit like that watching it. There's nothing really you got the impression that he was really manipulating everything for it to be, exactly as he wanted it to be. It was kind of reacting to what the car was doing all the time. Quite long corners. Karun, I think, was very, very good. And I remember I first started watching Karun in Formula 3 and got a big kick out of that win he had at Spa in the Formula 2 race. It was a really good thing. Not easy, he had a difficult career in terms of raising money and getting the budget, and got to Formula One. Of course, it wasn't the team to be with. It wasn't a great shot at all. But I think he definitely had the speed and talent to get top 10 finishes in Formula One on a regular basis in a good car, reasonably good car, and top man, really good guy. Loves his Formula One and loves his history of Formula One. So yeah, good friend actually, Karun, good guy. So thanks for that question. Game Borg. I wonder if this is a massive Bjorn Borg fan. Don't know. Visa Cash App RB is ridiculous. Team VicCap. Team Keisha. I don't know. I might call it Toto Wolf's Head. Toto equals Sports Betting Corporation. Wolf's Head US Oil Company. And what about the Toto cyber company that he was associated with through his team, the owner of which is now, I think, incarcerated, is it not? Not very blue chip. Not very blue chip. What's going on? Seamus, I'm sure. Harama, we're trying to update the track. Have we done that one? Oh no. So it has been used before and would only cost 50 million euros, 50 million euros rather than Madrid. Okay. I mean, Liberty have made their mind up. We know what they're doing. They're interested in being in the center of the world, commercial world, and not being in the center of nowhere. Not that Harama was nowhere, but it wasn't the exhibition center. Nice thing about Cash App, this is Daniel Yu, is you can have a percentage of your earnings be paid out in Bitcoin from 0% to 100%. Good luck with that, mate. No, thank you. Peter, we can pay you in Bitcoin. Will you be happy with that? Bitcoin? Okay. Bitcoin and their mining operations are supposedly very polluting as well. I think you guys could be chatting amongst yourself, but it's quite interesting hearing you talk about it, because there's obviously still very split opinions about Bitcoin. Kanab Sanzi, I don't even understand it. Paddy Lowe does. Paddy Lowe's been quite into Bitcoin for quite a long time. He tried to explain it to me once, and it's a bit like trying to teach a rhinoceros to play the piano, so it was never going to happen. But I take your word for it. I know a lot of people have made money, but my mum and dad always taught me never do anything just to make money. Always do it because it feels right from the heart. Forget about the money. Money takes care of itself. And I've always lived with that mantra. Now with intro of budget cap. This is from Kanab Sanzi. Why can't they bring back unlimited in-season testing, providing everything is under the cap? Wasn't the main point of restricting it to prevent big teams from outspending? Yeah, absolutely right. And I've said that. Bring back testing. Bring back third cars, spare cars, so that if there is a problem, we don't lose a driver in one lap or something. And if he's out in practice and the car stops, he can get into the spare car. What's wrong with a spare car? It's a tiny incremental cost compared with all the other stuff going on. And definitely, I think we should get rid of the cost cap anyway. And we'll allow teams like, if they want to, teams like Ferrari and Mercedes to build new cars mid-season to take on Red Bull and make the season less boring. How can that be bad for Formula One? Oh, they're spending too much money. But it's their decision to spend the money. It's not a bad thing to have Ferrari suddenly building a car that's going to beat the Red Bull. That's much better than the problems that Formula One might face by the odd person saying, oh, but it's terrible. Ferrari have just spent another 500 million building this car. Isn't that terrible? Well, if they want to spend the profits of their sale of their sports road cars, that's what Enzo Ferrari designed the company to do in the first place. I would go further than that. Don't even have the budget cap. But anyway, thank you for that. Daniel Yu. Moreover, all the flare gas thrown away in oil and gas operations worldwide could power Bitcoin many times over, if just harnessed. I'm sure you're right. Good. This is all very important stuff. David Zorita. Hi, Peter. It's a pleasure to hear you. Thank you very much, David. Very kind. Do you believe Jeddah Street Circuit has enough quality to be on the Formula One calendar? It is hard to believe that the safety standards are guaranteed. Scene crash. Oh, the Mick Schumacher crash. Yeah, I don't like it at all. I find that bit when they get those quick corners with that guardrail both sides and that curb that they hit sometimes. I mean, what is that all about? That's just like asking for trouble. And what I love quick corners, but what I don't like about that is that if somebody does have a moment, and let's say he's just out of sight, he's just a corner ahead, you can have a massive two-car shunt, absolutely massive. And the hairs are always standing on the back of my hands or arms or whatever, when we're on board in that section of road. I just don't like it. I don't like DRS. I think it's artificial, and we've seen how DRS has caused a lot of trouble. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's nothing I like about it. And I try to be positive in everything I say and do in life, and especially in motor racing. And the way to be positive is not just to say, I don't like it, but to say what would be better. And I keep coming back. What would be better would be, okay, not in Vegas. They've got the money. Do it in Jeddah and build the replica of the Nürburgring there in the middle of the desert. And let's have the Nürburgring 15-mile lap there. Do it. You build golf courses in the middle of the desert. Let's have the Nürburgring there. Artificial rain clouds as well. That bit's a joke. But you see my point. We don't need these sorts of circuits. And I think it's because there are some people out there who think it's the simplest, easiest, quickest way of getting close dramatic racing. Three DRS zones, lots of long straights, therefore lots of overtaking, put guardrails in, blah, 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 and go racing. Oh, I might have some crashes as well. And it's not great. It's not my Formula One. And luckily there are still some circuits on the calendar which are my Formula One. So that's good. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure it's Stefano Domenicali's Formula One either, but I mean, he does an incredibly good job of balancing a feel for the sport that he has innately with the sport's ownership by Liberty and of its requirement to grow commercially as it does. MBM, without oil and petrol, no products wealth would be created. Yeah, okay. Probably right. And V-carb says Harble Warble. Okay, Super 23 says, why not go back to Portugal? It wasn't long ago. They raced there. I agree. Great circuit. What's wrong with Portimao? Why aren't we going back there? Not enough money. Simple. Great shame. Good circuit. Lovely circuit. Love that place. Gameborg says musical intermezzo. That's interesting. Well, seeing you've said that, Gameborg, and you're probably being very facetious, I think. As it happens, there's something I wanted to say about the Madrid Exhibition Grand Prix, and that is that I was quite impressed with the theme music they had when it began anyway. It got a bit sort of over the top at the end, but I loved that flamenco guitar at the beginning and the fact that it was faintly related to the Formula One theme that we hear, you know, before the race and all that stuff. And it reminded me that I've never said this on air, and that is that I think Liberty have done a very, very good job of adapting that theme to the local music talents. And I think we had mariachis in Mexico, did we not? And we've had various other renditions of it. And it's really good how they do that. Somebody at Liberty's obviously got a real taste for music, and I'm not talking about the theme as such, but I'm talking about the way they localize the theme and the adaptations they have. And as it happens, I thought I've been given permission to use a little bit of that theme on the show because I think it's nice that they do that. Music is very, very important. And I put it to the backdrop of, I mentioned earlier, I was at Jarama in 72. I think it was the first Grand Prix I went to as a journalist, apart from South Africa, first European Grand Prix I went to, Jarama. And I've still got the armband. So I put the armband there and a little bit of the music from that, what we saw at the launch on Tuesday for the Madrid thing. So here's your, if you were asking for this, Gameborg, here's your musical intermezzo. Now, I know what you're asking, what you're thinking, and that is if Windsor's kept that, how much other stuff has he got in his studio? I've got quite a lot. It's pretty sad, actually. But, yeah. Anyway, I enjoyed that music. And it did get very loud at the end, which isn't my personal taste. I love that touch, though, they had with that. So, continuing the theme. W.C. Robinson, hi Peter, losing Barcelona would be a shame. I like Formula One races with unique purposes. And to me, Barcelona really exposed where all the driver car combos stacked up. Yeah, you're right there, because I mean, often you'd get them, you know, there would be the McLarens, there would be the Ferraris, there would be the whatever, Mercedes, Red Bulls, where all the driver cars stacked up. Some amazing drives, Kimi 05, Hamilton 20. What about Nigel Mansell 91, wheel to wheel with that and Senna, one of the great all-time photographs of Formula One. Now, I've had on my description Martin Tomlinson, the artist, and hit the link to his site. Have a look, because he's just done a great painting of that exact moment, Nigel out braking out in Senna into turn one in Barcelona 91. Great painting, and definitely worth having. I'll bring it up next week. I haven't actually prepared it here for some reason, but yeah, really, really nice. Yeah, Barcelona's had some great races, and some big accidents and lots of things. I mean, Pastor Maldonado's drive to beat Fernando when Fernando's driving for Ferrari, and the last win for Williams. I mean, that was pretty serious, wasn't it? Let alone Max Verstappen. Yeah, remember that one. Wow. Anyway, Barcelona. We've still got a few more years, 2 more, 24, 25, or 2 more years, haven't we? That's all. It's not a lot, is it? Shame. So, I'm not quite sure what this means, actually. I'm being a bit stupid here. Daniel, wow, not a circular cross-section. What's that for? Oh, that was probably the piston, I would imagine, when we had that. Yeah, no, that was what it was. You can. I don't know if you can still buy these or not, but you can certainly buy them from Cosworth at the time. And we at Williams, I got Carlos to sign it. There you go. That's the actual piston from the DFV. Robert Portelli. Where do you think Ferrari will place this year? I've just gone out of focus, I think, haven't I? Why is that? What's going on? Story of my life. There we go. I think they'll go pretty well. I say that about Mercedes and Ferrari because, I mean, for Pete's sake, they've had 2 years working on these regulations. It's not often that the regulations remain pretty much unchanged for 3 years. So if they don't get it right in year 3, then they might as well go and do Formula E or something. So, yeah, I'd like to think that they're going to be there winning, I don't know, 5 races maybe. Be nice if even more. But they've got very good drivers. They've got good people there. They've got Freddie Vasseur running it. It should be pretty good. If they're not, I don't know what. If I haven't got any hair left at all, really. That went prematurely, in case any of you know, when I had a very nasty incident in beginning of 91, when I got beaten up and thrown out of a van and left to bleed in a ditch. A lot more about that further down the road, but ever since then, about a year later, I lost all my hair. So there you go. Luckily, that's about the only thing I did lose. So there we go. I just think Ferrari will be, I will tear my hair out. What remains of it anyway, that's what I was going to say. If they have another bad year. Renault started pneumatic valve technology in the mid-80s, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think so. They might have started the technology, but my understanding from Bernard Dudo was that engine was the first engine to run it. They didn't run it on the turbos. It was that normally aspirated engine when they started to really search for revs where it came in. But MBM, you probably know more than I about that. That was my understanding at the time. And I remember us doing quite a lot of development work at Williams at the time when we were doing pneumatic valve testing, in fact, with the car. So, and I've actually got faxes here saying, hi, you know, we need to test the new pneumatic valve on the engine, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's another question about Lando and Oscar. Hi, Peter. This is from Peter H. Do you think Lando will be beaten by Oscar this year? Well, it depends on what we mean by beaten. I mean, because really, for a rookie, Oscar did pretty well against Lando last year, and there were moments when he did beat him in qualifying, and he was right there in races as well on several occasions. So he went. It wasn't a race-winning car, the McLaren. So, well, it was almost a race-winning car, but he was pretty near to Lando on occasions. He had as good a first season in Formula One as I think he could have had, to be honest. I think he drove really well. If you mean, will he score more points in the entire year than Lando Norris? I don't think he will, because Lando's been around for quite a long time now. He's got momentum with the team, and he knows how to score points. And that's a little bit under the heading of Oscar's still got to get on top of the Pirelli tyres and a few other things. So I don't think he'll outpoint him, but I think he could have at least as many good finishes as Lando. And I think if people think Lando's going to dominate him, I think a lot of people will be surprised at how well Oscar goes. And sod's law, if McLaren do win, a bit like Rubens and Johnny Herbert, or Clay Regazzoni and Alan Jones, it might well be Oscar who gets the win and not Lando. That's just a sod's law thing, but it could happen as well. Hi Peter, just wondering if you were there when Formula One went to Donington Park and what you thought of it. No, I wasn't actually. In '93 I was in America working on an IndyCar project. So I wasn't there, and I certainly wasn't there when Tazio Nuvolari won for Auto Union in 1939. So when the Auto Union team had to have a police escort to get out of the track because, you know, the Munich crisis was collapsing, was happening. World War II was about to start, and there was Nuvolari winning for Auto Union in England. And they actually, what did they do? I think they actually delayed the race, didn't they? Something to do with the Munich crisis. They had to change it at the last minute, the date. Anyway, I wasn't around then, as you can probably guess. So no, I didn't. But you know, for me, Donington is actually a very nice circuit. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of good corners at Donington. And I think a Formula One car, even a modern Formula One car, would be very good around there, would look good around there, and be very good racing around there. Down the hill, poof, and then that right-hander onto the back straight, down to the hairpin. Be a nice thing, actually, for us to go back to Donington because of the history of the circuit and its long history with Grande Épreuve racing and then Formula One. So probably not going to happen. I'm sure it won't happen. Money, facilities, all the rest of it. But no, I wasn't there. But I do like Donington, and it's a very demanding circuit in my view. Good corners there. So Martotto 77. Which was best, Long Beach, Detroit, Phoenix, or Dallas? Alongside Donington 93, the 84 race in JR's hometown was probably one of the best one-off Grand Prix, despite the shambolic surface and insane heat. Yeah, at the time, of course, we didn't know it was a one-off race because Bernie had signed this 5-year deal, I think it was, with Dallas, and we were all looking forward to going back there every year. And where I sat, it was a great race, as you say. Yeah, it was Dallas, it was downtown Dallas. It wasn't a bad circuit. I tell you what was a very good street circuit was Detroit. I've mentioned this before, but I love the Detroit street circuit and the way the whole race was done around the Rensen there. It was a great race, great circuit, and quite a long circuit. But getting back to Dallas, it was, because Dallas was such a huge thing at the time, the TV show. Patrick Duffy was there, Larry Hagman was, I don't know, Larry Hagman was there actually, but Steve Canale was there, and the guy that played Cliff was there, and Linda Gray was there. It was a great atmosphere, and they did a lot of pre-race stuff in the build-up. We went out to South Fork Ranch, and Alfa Romeo had a big party there, and it was great. Race was at 11 in the morning. Everybody got up at about 4. There was a pre-race warm-up as well, and on the Sunday morning. So, yeah, it was a good race too. A lot's going on. That argy-bargy between Keke and Nigel early on, and then Nigel having that problem, having to push the car home and collapsing, and Keke with the cool suit doing a very good job in the Williams Honda FW10. And, yes, fond memories of that race. So let's look at the other ones. Long Beach. Long Beach was just a outstandingly good Grand Prix venue and Grand Prix. Went to the first one there. Dan Gurney's dad sang the national anthem on the grid, and it was just paradise from beginning to end, really. Hollywood, the whole thing was just an amazing Grand Prix, lovely atmosphere. Phoenix, no, never really got into Phoenix, and I did go there, but it was very flat, I felt, compared with Dallas and Long Beach. So those three, Long Beach, Detroit and Dallas, were all excellent Grand Prix. Such a shame we don't race in any of those places anymore, and it's such a shame Dallas was just one weekend, and at Long Beach we left purely because Chris Pook did a deal with IndyCar, and basically it put Bernie wanted it exclusively for Formula One. So on the basis that if they had the money to do IndyCar, it should have gone to Formula One, I guess. But it was really good. It was shambolic, Dallas. It was insane, but it was a great race. Really good race. Really enjoyed it. There are lots of Grand Prix venues. I mean, Watkins Glen was just wonderful as well, for so many reasons, but dangerous, obviously. Armco was the danger thing there. And Indianapolis. I really enjoyed Indy. I thought it was a great Grand Prix venue, and I think it was fitting that we were there, and I think we should still be there. I still can't believe we're not. Why aren't we at Indy? It's a great race. Lovely city, lovely people, good circuit. Okay, here we go. Driver swaps for 25 already. Ewan Vanette. Hello, Peter. A driver swap for 25. Lando to Red Bull, Sergio to McLaren. So you think Sergio will keep racing? And I think we've had this one before. I can't imagine he'd go back to McLaren. I mean, he's a good number 2, but that's only if you got a great number 1. And I'm not saying Lando and Oscar aren't great drivers. Well, they're very, very good at the moment, I would say. But I'm not sure you'd want Lando Perez. I can't imagine if Perez loses the Red Bull drive. I just can't imagine he'll keep racing. I'm sure he'll stop at that point. And Lando, I think Max would probably say, yeah, okay, I'm all right with Lando, because he knows he can beat Lando. And Lando will do a good job in the other car and bring it home. But as I say, for me, Lando would be better off, if he could, trying to get a Ferrari drive alongside Charles Leclerc. I think that would be a good place for Lando. Assuming they get, that would mean replacing him with Carlos Sainz. And I think I think Carlos Sainz would do a very good job alongside Max, actually. I think that's a better combination, would be Max Sainz and Leclerc Norris. That's what I'd like to see anyway. But yeah, all good stuff for chatting about. So we're coming back now. Sorry, I meant skunkworks in the sense of favouring cross-functional collaboration over silos and creating short feedback loops. Okay, well above my pay grade. I don't know. I don't really understand all that stuff, because when you're running a team well, surely everybody communicates and you know who's doing what and you get on with it. That's what Formula One's all about. And short feedback loops, yeah, nobody wants to sit around and talk very much. You just get on with it. That's what Patrick Head did. And so I know that you mean this in all sincerity, but I can't imagine that somebody sits down and speaks like that and actually says, I want more cross-functional collaboration over silos, and I want shorter feedback loops. What does it all mean? Just get on with it. It's pretty simple. Everybody knows what they do. Get the best from everybody and get on with it. Isn't that what happens? And I think probably James Bowles does that. I'm sure he does. But whether he speaks in that sort of gobbledygook, I don't know. I can't imagine. I don't think he does. Anyway, we'll see. Andrew Storm says Logan is rubbish, or was rubbish. I don't think he was. Are you comparing him with Nicholas Latifi, please? I think he's done a pretty good job. He's been not slow on occasion, and he drives pretty well. And what do you want from a guy who's bringing a lot of money to the team and an American flag, which is not bad for any race team? I think he's done pretty well. Yeah, I mean, he may not, and he drove very well, I thought. Formula Renault, Formula 3, Formula 2, I think he did pretty well. So I'm a bit of a closet Logan fan, I think. I should admit it. Kimi Antonelli. Yeah, massive amount of, this is from Octogrammaton Walkenstein de Dreisgent. Yeah, same to you. Comment on Kimi Antonelli. Well, anybody called Kimi's got to be pretty good, haven't they, really? It's the bottom line on that. First point. Or his mum and dad have got their heart in the right place. Secondly, massive amount of talk about him as the new star of the future. He's 17, I think. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Certainly in terms of my interest in drivers, I tend to stay away from them. If there's a million people telling me how good they are, I just go in the other direction and look at somebody else. But I have watched him a little bit driving, and he does drive well, but when I was watching him, he got beaten pretty soundly by guys in the same car. But it doesn't mean much because, it would have been set up or whatever. There's an interesting test, I think, coming up pretty soon. I think it's Silverstone. He's going to drive a Euro F3 car just to get mileage prior to jumping into Formula 2, because you can't test proper F2 cars, or indeed proper F3 cars. I say proper FIA. So he's driving a Boyo RR Euro Formula car, which is a beautiful racing car for sure. That was light, nimble, Dallara, everything worked, proper racing car. He's driving one of those, and the other drivers as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes in that and what Boyo says after that. I'll have a chat to him and see what he says, and I'll report back to you, because Boyo will get a very good feel straight away for how good or not he is. And he doesn't mince words, Boyo, either. So we'll see after that test, I think. But, all that Mercedes stuff around him, and isn't he brilliant? And it's all a bit too much, isn't it? Some people, says Nippimoto, some people regard rally drivers as the best drivers. To me, it's like red versus white ball cricket. The rally drivers are more flashy, but they can't play a classical cover drive. Formula One demands more. That's nicely put. I think you're pretty right about that. I think what the rally drivers do is much more visually obvious, isn't it? You know, throw the car this way, throw the car sideways, then you got the traction. But when you see Max Verstappen on the absolute limit, you don't see that stuff very obviously. You've really got to watch for it and compare him with other drivers and see what they're doing. So there is the cover drive, if you like, the David Gower, Colin Cowdrey. I better get a nice, Tendulkar cover drive. And the rally car is, it's all over the shop, but it is, it's hitting 6 after 6 after 6. Now, I've said this before, I think most of the great Grand Prix drivers could adapt to driving rally cars very, very well, to the point where they could probably win a rally if they really focused on it and were with a good team. Carlos Reutemann, relatively recent good example, finished third in the rally, Côte d'Azur rally in a factory Peugeot after his retirement from Formula One. Jim Clark was very good in rallies, so was Sterling Moss, so was Graham Hill. Andrew Cowan was pretty good in race cars and obviously good in rallies. But I don't think a great rally driver would necessarily have such a happy time in Formula One. I think the essence of Formula One is so different. It's a bit like, as Carlos used to say, it's the difference between Ingemar Stenmark, the Swedish slalom skier, who was never more than whatever Carlos measured 6.5 degrees out of line, compared with most of the others who were sort of 8 or 9 degrees out of line in terms of slip sliding the skis. And that's the difference, I think, that a great Formula One driver doesn't actually slide the car that much. The car's obviously on the edge, but it's all manipulation. It's not getting on top of the car and thrusting it into a position where you can just control it. So it'd be interesting to see Carlos Sainz in a rally car, wouldn't it? He's had so much, obviously, feedback from his dad. It'd be really interesting to see how well he would drive a rally car if he really put his mind to it. Probably, I would imagine he'd be really good because he's got great car control and he's got a great feel for, looking at the corner from afar and getting in there sideways and doing the job with the power on at just the right moment. I think he'd do a very good job. As I say, Rob Wilson does quite a lot of rally drivers, mainly for their tarmac driving performance, but inevitably every driver always says, wow, I learned a lot from you, Rob, on this. And that's, it's all, and Rob's a race driver, obviously, and so it just shows there is a massive amount of overlap there, and how important a tarmac is to a rally driver these days as well. So yeah, I mean, I love rallying. I wish there were more hours in a day when I could, at the end of everything, you could sit down and watch these rallies from beginning to end, because I'm a massive fan. And Sebastian Loeb, as I mentioned, to me is an incredible talent who, as I mentioned a while ago, who I think could have made the switch to Formula One successfully had he done so with a team behind him, with confidence behind him that it was all going to continue to a logical end and that he was in a good car. And had he done that, I think Loeb had that talent to do that. I think it's probably the exception to everything I've just been saying. I think he was the one. Vic Elford was the other. Massive overlap between Vic's sports car rallying and Formula One talent. He was good at all of them. Helped massively by having a photographic memory too, which doesn't hurt you in any dimension. So yeah, Vic Elford's still another of my great heroes. So this is probably related to the whole business of bringing a street circuit to the centre of the world. Do you think Formula One is focusing too much on the glamour instead of maintaining driver motivation? Drivers don't seem to be as excited to race as they once were. Yeah, I think it's probably why Max Verstappen says, I'm not very keen on these street circuits. I put the word "these" in there, meaning the current crop, because racing isn't as much fun probably as it used to be. It's all DRS passes and high-speed braking into 90-degree lefts and rights, and it's not the craft that it could be. And on top of that, I think because of Netflix and because of the way Formula One is going commercially, the drivers are being pigeonholed to play a specific role in the team, to speak when they're spoken to and not otherwise, and to say the right thing at the right moment, and the interviews are always quite boring as a result, and that will have its effect on the way a driver gets out of bed in the morning and what he thinks about life, I think, because he can't do what Ayrton Senna used to do. As Darren Heath was saying not so long ago, you could bump into these guys in the car park and they would talk about anything. And Mario the same, they lived a life and they were in control of their lives. You get the feeling that the drivers today are not really in control of what they're doing. Everything has to be done under a corporate heading. And yes, that's to their benefit because they're going to make more money out of it. The team will have more money in the long run from the sponsors and all the rest of it. But it is eating into the whole business of just enjoying life and enjoying motor racing. And Nigel Roebuck sent me that picture of Jean Bera today. He also sent me a picture of Sterling Moss and Jean Bera smiling. It's a picture and they're both laughing. And you can just tell they're just loving it. And I wrote back to Nigel, I said, it's incredible to look at that photograph because you can see that they're laughing because they love life and they love the life they're leading. There's nothing contrived about it. And there's nothing stupid about it. It's just like, we're racing drivers, we're so lucky. And I'm not sure you see that as much. I think some drivers express that sometimes, but they don't get an opportunity really to do so very much. And that's another great shame. This is Glenn Firth from Melbourne. I wonder if you're in relation to Harry Firth. Same spelling, I think. Great rally driver. Hi, Peter from Melbourne. Your recent idea of a driver change every race is a bit drastic. How about restricting to 3 years to 1 to learn 2 and 3 to exploit? Yeah, but the whole point was you have this auction for every race and nobody knows who's going to get what until the Thursday night, and then it's a massive thing in the media, and then everybody wants to see Max in a slow car, or they want to see, I don't know, Logan Sargent in a Red Bull. That's how you do it. But if you did that over a year, how would it work? Because there's no way Max Verstappen would say, oh, well, I agree for a year, I'm going to drive for Haas. I just don't see how it would only work if you did it on a race by race basis. So that's what I suggested. Of course, it'll never happen. So it's all hypothetical anyway. But yeah, thanks. Gandalf the Fool, we have a lot from you, Gandalf, don't we? Hello, Peter. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I am very well. Thank you very, Gandalf. It's fine. Seamus again. I just love the way Formula One and corporate money can just run roughshod over any city they please without the slightest thought towards the citizens that live there. I won't read that last bit out loud because this probably will be a live stream, a podcast. But anyway, I think you're being facetious there, Seamus. Yeah. This is Sizvi Hadebi. Hi, Peter. Any ideas on how net zero is going to be achieved when the calendar keeps expanding? Surely this is counterintuitive, isn't it? Thanks for sharing your wisdom. I don't have much wisdom about net zero. Every email I get from a team or F1 always says, we are committed to net zero. And there's 5 paragraphs of tiny italics telling me how they're going to do that. And guess what? I don't read very much of it, but I don't know. I'm just a basic guy. Of course, with the expanding calendar means an expanding carbon footprint. And of course, I don't get the motorhomes and I don't get the expenditure on motorhomes and travel. It's just like, how are they going to stop it? Of course, there's a game plan, and the net thing is quite a convenient way of solving that problem. But the reality is it's not a great look for Formula One, I think, if they're constantly talking about budget cap and net zero, to have these huge motorhomes in the paddock and the amount of time and effort it takes to do that. It's just wrong. So who was the first team to have a motorhome in the paddock and to have all the mechanics eating under an awning and make life civilized for the team rather than go to the hotel and have to push the cars onto a truck again and go to a garage? Who was the first team to do that, do you think? I know because I'm doing a bit of research on that at the moment for the next exhibition. It was Bugatti. Can you believe it? Bugatti came to Lyon, I think it was 1924, with an awning with the whole thing, and all the mechanics ate under the awning. They had Ettore Bugatti actually had his own motorhome for his family, and everyone was invited to come and look. And he spent quite a bit of money on it. Brilliant. So that's where the carbon footprint began. Bugatti. Fabulous. Hi Peter, the World Rally Championship season's about to start. Are you a rallying fan? I wish it was back to its heyday in the 80s, 90s. Seems to be an afterthought for the FIA nowadays. Shame, isn't it? I am a rallying fan. Roger Clark, another of my heroes. And I had a memorable time with Colin McRae on the Rally of Sardinia one year. Jumping in and out of helicopters, I got to say. And yeah, really, really miss those days. Henry Toivonen was one of the quickest drivers, I think, ever to walk the planet Earth. Sadly, we lost him in a big shunt, didn't we, in those days when the rally cars were really quick. As was Bettiger. What was his first name? The Italian, we lost him too, didn't we? Very quick Italian rally driver, Bettiger. Walter Roll, another superstar. So many. Yeah, I love rallying. As I say, I wish there were as many hours in the day because I'm doing a lot of other stuff at the moment as well. It's just not, there's literally not a lot more time to do this live stream. When did we start? 7:30 Spanish time. Yeah, about another 20 minutes to go. So yeah, I drove a, I think I've told you this, but I was on a special stage once with Hannu Mikkola in an Audi Quattro. And that was memorable, to say the least. And what else have I done in a rally car? Gordon Batchelor, you probably haven't heard his name, had an Escort, Mark 1 Escort. Did a bit of stuff with him. He was really quick as well. Really quick. Tony Folkes, another very fast rally driver. So many, but here we go. But this is probably me talking about Spa and how a lot of us quite like to watch from the outside of Pouin rather than from a 5-star hotel. Has it ever not rained at Spa? Yeah, I'm sure it has at some point. Did it rain in the 64 Belgian Grand Prix that had 4 different winners? When first Dan Gurney, then Graham Hill, then Bruce McLaren all ran out of fuel on the last lap and Jimmy Clark inherited the win? I don't think it did. There you go, there's one. But usually it rains in the mountains. So, hi Peter, how do you find the idea of having sprint races with the Formula One reserve drivers? Well, the problem with the sprint races is that that's the race cars for people like Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Would he really want the reserve drivers jumping into them on the Saturday morning before they're going to do them in the Grand Prix? I mean, a racing driver feels about his race car as most of us feel about our children. They absolutely don't want anybody touching it or doing anything to it. And if they bend it, they feel sick. So, would you want, if you were Max Verstappen, would you want Liam Lawson doing a race in your car before the Grand Prix proper? I don't think so. It means having different cars. Come back to Peter Windsor's suggestion, bring back spare cars to Formula One. Let's have 3 cars entered by every team. Sorry, not 3 cars. Let's have 2 cars, but there's a 3rd car in the garage. That's what I want. And I want to see the drivers jumping from one to the other. And then if they have a problem in practice, they get in the other car. That's what I want. And I don't think it's a huge incremental increase in costs. So, Roderick Boudouin says, hi Peter, what are your expectations for Visa Cash App RB for 2024? Well, I hope I can make some money out of them somehow with my Visa card. I don't know how it's going to work. I remember Eddie Jordan once in the days when cash machines started. Cash machine, can't think of anything better. Put in a coin, put in this card and I get all this money out. Oh, can you believe it? Top of the morning to you. Well, I hope it works. In the old days, when Marlboro came in, they'd give everybody a watch. Or when, that's another good example of a sponsor. When Hertz sponsored Jackie Stewart, everybody got a 5-star Hertz credit card, 20% off, mega. So with Visa coming in now, please, I expect a huge thing in the post, which is a Visa, whatever is it, Cash App thing, which allows me to go into a cash machine and get some money. Yep, and I'll be very happy about Visa. That happens. So what's this? Martin last name. I'd like it if on Friday the drivers would go hide and a few fans had to find them in a game of hide and seek. The order is the sprint race start order. Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think some of the fans might go crazy, and I don't think Liberty would like it because they don't really want fans in the paddock area. So I don't think that's going to happen, Martin. But I take the point of where you're coming from. When I began to read your your question, your comment, I thought it might go down the direction that I've often dreamt about, which is that there is a superstar driver out there who likes to remain incognito, and we don't know who he is really, and he has a black helmet and a black overall and black visor, and he gets fined every race because he never does any interviews, and he gets out of the car with the helmet on, disappears into the motorhome, and he's blindingly quick and wins a lot of races, and nobody can talk to him. Very, very cool, wouldn't it? But I don't think it'll happen either, will it? Team has to have the driver out there saying nothing. So Jack Jackson, Sky Sports Prime failing, not once saying, if the lap cars are not released before the start of lap 57, this race must end by a safety car. Didn't they say that? Well, where I was, we were saying it. And I'm amazed they didn't say that. Shocked to hear that. Haha, no crowd cheers at Zandvoort, says Stanley 3-0. I think that's the booing, isn't it? For Lewis that you're talking to. Okay, Andrew Storm is saying, please, no questions about long short corners, Rob Wilson, so boring. Well, Andrew, I find that comment quite boring, to be honest. So, thank you very much. No more of that. If there's anybody less boring in the world, it would be Rob Wilson, I would have thought. But then, of course, you've never taken the trouble to get to know him. Jack Jackson, they groomed the audience to accept the illegal restart. Every actual racer knew the end was manipulated and inauthentic. Well, that's talking about in response to Abu Dhabi 21, isn't it? So AB, respect from India, love your analysis and videos. Thank you very much. Very kind. Very kind of you to say that. Brandon, here we go. Hi Peter, you've often talked about drivers having supple inputs, Lando and others. Can you expand on what that means and how you might be able to see that in an onboard shot? Thanks for answering. You can see it more on telemetry, because a driver who doesn't have supple inputs, you're going to see more spikes in the telemetry, and a driver with a softer input over a given period of time will have fewer spikes. That's why we talk about it being spiky at some point. But the telemetry doesn't show everything, and a lot of it is movement in and out of the brake pedal pressure, the throttle, and the steering, in and out of the steering, which is all happening at the same time, balancing the balls in the air, on the table, on the billiard table. And that can only happen if you are supple. It's like anything, if any of you play golf, there's a certain strength at which you have to hold the shaft. It's about like the strength you need to squeeze a tube of toothpaste. Too much, you're too tense. Too little, and you've got too much movement. It's finding that exact right amount of suppleness and softness in the inputs in a racing car. It's exactly the same thing. And if you are relatively tense, you're not going to feel the surface of the road as effectively as a driver who's got it absolutely right in terms of his muscles and his movements. So none of that, I think, is measurable. It's probably teachable, but I don't think it's measurable. The result is measurable, obviously, but how you actually measure the suppleness of an input, if telemetry can catch it, you might see it on a spike if it's a specific type of movement, like the initial application of a brake pedal pressure, but you wouldn't necessarily see it on the release of a brake pedal pressure and the way and the rate at which it's being released. And that suppleness in the feet as well as the hands and the arms and the shoulders and everything, which is guiding the steering and the throttle and the brakes. And it's a very rare thing. It's a very rare thing. And I think that's why often you see drivers who are very, very good, right at the top of their art in terms of suppleness, for example, who aren't sweating as much, who aren't as tired, because they haven't been at that moment when the car's suddenly done something to surprise them. They've had to react to it. Everything is kind of under control. They're manipulating the car, and it's all happening in its own time space. Dare I say it, they're in the zone, a phrase that's often used, which doesn't really say that much, but it encapsulates this moment when everything starts to happen in slow motion, and when you're not driving on adrenaline, but you're driving on feel and touch, and everything's happening slowly. So I hope that kind of helps a bit. Yeah. What's the next one? Okay, he just says, Gameborg, just to clear the air, says, I'm not a massive Bjorn Borg fan. Borg happens to be my first name. I am a massive Bjorn Borg fan, actually. I met him a few times. He's a really good bloke. And wow, what a tennis player. Talk about low pulse rate under pressure. Tony, this is talking about these inputs, supple inputs. He's saying you can notice them on the onboards with the steering movements in corners and the inputs of going into the corner and out of it, positioning. Yeah, I think I didn't get to that point, did I? I think you can see it, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult to see the very, very precise movements that add up to suppleness. You can see that Max Verstappen does that and Yuki Tsunoda does that. You can see that. But that's not what I'm really talking about. That is obviously an important difference, but the real difference is going to be in the footwork more than the handwork. And that's obviously not on the onboards. So hand work, I mean, when you see a driver doing one of these things, and I'll put my hands behind, they're doing one of these, moving, they're kind of dancing around for no reason and sort of getting ready for the next quick corner. You know, if it goes this way, I'm ready. If it goes that way, I'm ready. And, you know, it's all reflexy stuff. And you never see a great driver doing that. Everything is always just like this, to the point where those watching say, oh, he's got a great car. It's so easy. Look, he's just having to do this. But it's not because he's got a better car than anybody else. It's because he's manipulating it all with his feet. That is the point. And it's really difficult, of course, to capture that. A Bouvitol says there was no parity with unlimited budgets. That makes no sense. Well, I have to disagree with that, because we've had many eras of racing where there's been incredibly close races and championships with no limit on the budgets whatsoever. 64, 67, 68. As recently as the V10 era and the V8 era, we had very, very close racing with much lower, far fewer reliability issues, and there were no budget caps. So, you know, very, very close. Much closer than we have today with the budget cap. Please advise. Tony Klebe says, hi Peter, been listening to you for years now. About time you stopped, isn't it, Tony? No, thank you very much. I take that in the right vein. It's very kind of you to say that. And yeah, you know, all I do is talk about the stuff I enjoy, really. I'm quite selfish, but, you know, what can I do? So KGM 087067 says, eating a great BLT right now, loving this stream. And there's nothing I would love more than a BLT right now. So thank you very much for that. That's I think I've got some sort of chicken rice thing that my wife has made. Very kind of her. So here's an interesting one. This is from Maxter Ace, that's a good name. Do you see any risk of Mercedes reversing to being exclusively engine supplier and shut down or sell the Formula One team? Well, historically, they've come and gone in Formula One. They've been in a long time now by their own standards. And so it wouldn't be out of character for Mercedes to pull out again and for Toto Wolff to pull the plug on the whole team thing. Whether he would then continue to do engines, I doubt they would, to be honest. I think they would, you know, that isn't going to happen in the immediate future. So if it does happen, it'll be in the post-26 era, and already they're committed to that. So it's not going to happen then. We're talking at least a decade from now, when the cars in theory are going to be smaller, lighter, even more electrification probably. And so it's difficult to see them pulling out then, actually, to be honest. So they've got a huge powertrain company, and so they potentially could just supply engines to customers, but the team has got such a large infrastructure now that I doubt they would do that now, to be honest. And I, you know, they've got the franchise in Formula One, they're big, they make so much money. Who's going to buy them anyway? Who's got the money to buy Mercedes? I wouldn't have thought anyone in the world. So, oh, okay, the musical intermezzo was, Gameborg says that was because I went off screen, that's why I said musical intermezzo. Okay, I get the point now, thank you. Martin Lee, my dinners are cold, but love from Denmark. Hey, yeah, here we go, Duncan Cunningham. This is a nice question. Can you talk about Sheridan Thin a little bit more when you were at Williams? Yeah, it was just a lovely. I was very close to Sheridan. We got on incredibly well. We both ran when I knew, you know, when Sheridan was there. We both worked in the commercial side, on the sponsorship side, but we were very close to Frank in our different ways. Sheridan, because he'd got to know Frank in the early '60s when Frank was ducking and diving and buying and selling conrods and pistons and going racing, Formula 3 racing, and then running cars for drivers like Piers Courage and Roy Pike. And Sheridan did actually live in that famous flat in West London with, at some point, Frank Williams, Jochen Rindt, you know, you name it, they're all there. And Sheridan himself raced a Mini. So he was part of the Christabel Carlisle, John Rhodes Mega Mini thing, and that was good. And he knew Frank, and they got on well because Sheridan went to Eton and Frank loved that, and Piers Courage went to Eton, so they got on very well. And Sheridan was just a very funny person who spoke. He's incredibly articulate, very intelligent, very worldly wise, could break into Latin whenever he needed to. And but I introduced him to, you know, other things, Sting and Nigel Mansell and all my stuff, and he loved all that as well, and he embraced it all, and that's why we got on so well, I think. And I don't know how many of you have seen Yes Minister, as it became Yes Prime Minister, but Sheridan was effectively Sir Humphrey, the civil servant, and Frank Williams was effectively Hacker. And we often used to have, Sheridan and I, meetings on how to handle Frank and how to break some bit of news to Frank, or how we'd get something out of Frank that we needed. And I suppose I was the, you know, I've forgotten his name, Bernard, was it? I was the minion, if you like. I was Bernard. He was you know, the civil servant. And so we were a great team. I don't think Frank ever really got that, but we worked really closely together. And in odd weekends, he would go off to Shelsley, Walsh or Prescott hill climbs, because his son Piers would be hill climbing and Sheridan would be driving the car and helping Piers with the hill climbing, and Piers would be doing this and that. And now Piers is very high up at McLaren. I think he's COO or something like that at McLaren, very high up. And isn't that a wonderful thing? Sheridan would be so proud of that. And so he'd be so respectful of Piers' position as well. And he's called Piers after Piers Courage, no question about that. And he was good friends with, I think he was very good friends with Christian Horner too. When Christian was racing in Formula 3000, Sheridan was close to him. And so he and Christian would be good friends today for sure. So long and short, I really miss Sheridan. Lovely guy, passed away suddenly whilst he was on holiday, I think in Egypt, Cairo, somewhere like that. Very sad. He's also, Jonathan Williams was another, the racing driver Jonathan Williams, another very good friend of Sherry's, and they used to chat a lot, and we used to have lots of Jonathan Williams stories as well. Yeah, I don't think I ever laughed as much as I did in those days with Sherry at Williams, particularly when we were going for Frank and getting Frank to do things he didn't want to do. We definitely had a good double act going. Yeah, I'll be all in the book at some point, I guess, won't it? Thank you, Duncan, for that question. Very kind. Sen says, can you believe it's 30 years since we lost Ayrton? Time passes, isn't it? It's only a number, but time does pass, and we can all remember that day as if it was yesterday. Well, I can anyway. As I can remember the day Jim Clark passed away, as if it was yesterday. So, yeah, these things stay with you, don't they? This is from Gameborg. Wow, that loss of hair story was unexpected. Must have been extremely stressful for the hair to come out like that. Sorry to hear. Yeah, it was a big deal, that one. Got my head bashed around a lot and wasn't good. Anyway, as I say, that's for another time, really. Not ready to talk about that in detail yet. Freedomy. This is when I get to the end of the show and I think we haven't said very much, have we? Haven't done very much today. But then Freedomy says, hi, Peter, hope you're going well. Thanks for this great Formula One insight. So if there was insight there, I'm very pleased. Thank you. I look forward to this all week. Given that Ferrari are now practically a Charles team, I see him challenging Max, don't you? Is it a Charles team now? Yeah, well, if it is, I'm quite pleased about that because I'm a big Charles fan. And I just keep saying it's impossible to imagine that they won't be. You know, what are they going to do wrong this year to stop them? It's going to be more politics, more strategy dramas. You know, there's 3 years on. They just can't keep doing that, can they? They have to get it right. And they've got such a great driver team. I include Carlos in that as well. I think they're going to be, think they're going to be good. There you go. Finton Main says the Renault Turbo had a lot of DNFs due to valve spring failure. Yeah, well, that's probably one of the reasons they got on with the whole pneumatic valve thing quite quickly. And it would really work well out of the box with us, really. It was very good. Anthony Virtue says, awesome content. Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony. I love hearing about Formula One's history. Max driving different cars in sim racing might make him more aware of different driving styles and how to adapt his approach. Maybe. As I said, I don't think sim racing adds up to very much when it comes to the sort of detail we're talking about that is related to feeling the surface of the road and suppleness and managing all the dynamic weights. And there's just no way a sim can get near that. So I don't believe it was. I don't believe it's something you could do on a sim, to be honest. Mini Light simply says, I remember Senna's Lotus Renault having pneumatic valves too. So that would have been what, 87? Maybe one or two races. Maybe they were just trying them. I can remember as clear as day talking to Bernard Dudo in the garage about the first real test for pneumatic valves. So it was in 91. So everybody forgets that Michael's greatest drive was in Barcelona. Was it? Ferrari 87? Yeah, one of his greatest drives. Better than Hungary, when the 4 pit stop Hungary. Spa. Mouse down. Thanks for your efforts, Peter. You really add something to the experience of the sport for me. Thank you very much. Good, thank you. All right, here we go. I'm going to have to probably make this the last one, I think. Sorry, all those that I'm going to miss. But hi, Peter. Carl Dieter's Fields Hill Nemesis from South Africa. Could you share any of your acquired knowledge of the halcyon and suicidal days and drivers of auto unions on skinny tyres wearing leather aviator helmets? When you say wearing leather aviator helmets, I think they wore white. Generally, they were white cotton helmets. I don't think they wore leather. But anyway, splitting hairs. And there was an occasion, I think it was Louis Chiron, in his Bugatti, something happened and he lost his goggles and his cotton helmet. Had to drive with neither. Yeah, Auto Union. Interesting to think that Ferdinand Porsche was involved in the technology at both Mercedes and Auto Union. Think about that. And of course, the Auto Union, mid-engine Auto Union, was very much a Ferdinand Porsche idea and concept, which they adopted. And this was all born of the 1933 Hitler push to have German teams winning Grand Prix racing, beating the the Italians and the British. And so a lot of money was put into both Mercedes and Auto Union. That's how we had all that technology. And, you know, if you think of the drivers of that time, I think of Tazio Nuvolari, unbelievable heroism, bravery, strength, but also for sure a feel for the surface of the road and suppleness. But, you know, you think about him, it was in 33, he broke his leg in Italy. And 5 weeks later, he was driving a Maserati. And 5 weeks later, he was at Avus, the German circuit with the banking, with his left leg in plaster, getting his mechanics to adapt the position of the pedals so that he could race with his leg in plaster, and he finished 5th. That's what they did in those days. And yeah, you know, the Auto Union was pretty sketchy in terms of its balance. It was very, very knife edgy, very low polar moment of inertia, mid-engined, and Nuvolari at a circuit like, or Bernd Rosemeyer as well, a circuit like Donington or the Nürburgring, just flicking from side to side everywhere. And you had to be a brilliant driver to get the best from the Auto Union, but if you did, it was a very good car, quick car. I mean, 195 I think they were doing, approximately that sort of speed. Mercedes was definitely a better handling car. Rudi Caracciola, again, a hero, massive shunt at Monaco in a privately entered, I think again it was a Maserati. I think the brakes failed going into back, and I think it was 33 again, and broke his leg badly, to the point where after the operation his right leg was 2 inches shorter than his left, and that's how he then drove this great career of his, with that impediment. Not that it was that difficult. Bruce McLaren had a similar thing, but it just shows his commitment to racing. He lost his wife in a skiing accident, his first wife, and kept going and just won all those races with Mercedes. I think in the final analysis, in terms of Grand Épreuve, if you take out the Targa Florio and races in America and various other things, I think Nuvolari is just ahead of Caracciola, and both of them pretty comfortably ahead of, I would suspect it would have been Louis Chiron, with probably Rosemeyer very near Chiron. And yeah, just all amazing drivers who had to put up not only with incredible danger in terms of the circuits were full of telegraph poles and trees, but also incredible handicaps in the car, you know, heat and fuel leaks and things. I mean, Felice Nazzaro was actually adapted his own seat when he was racing for Fiat, because it was injuring him. The seat was injuring him, so he actually had this sort of softer seat made just to be able to survive the Grand Prix distance. And don't forget, there were very long races as well in those days. So you go on. I think those guys were all heroes, and I love that period, the 30s. I love the 50s, the 60s, 70s, 80s as well. But the 30s, to me, there's this romance about it. And when you think about Dick Seaman, a bit like Lewis Hamilton, you know, joining Mercedes, the young British superstar, joining Mercedes, getting that opportunity, winning the German Grand Prix in 1938, and then being undecided what to do about a Heil Hitler salute on the podium, and did a sort of half-hearted wave, which was a brave thing to do. And he'd thought long and hard about what he would do if he did win a race for them, and it happened to be in Germany with all of the Nazis there. And imagine what that was like for Dick Seaman. But he did it, and he kept his drive, and he was getting better all the time. And now it was 1939, and he was racing in the wet at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. I think he was lying second, but he was pushing hard, and he lost the Merc where the bus stop chicane is now, but was then just a fast left-hand kink, went off. Didn't lose, he just ran a bit wide, and the car hit a tree and then somersaulted and then caught fire, and he was trapped underneath the car. And they took him to hospital nearby, and he was not badly injured in terms of bones breaking, and he was conscious and he was talking. And And one of the last things he said was, please tell my wife I won't be able to take her to the cinema next week. And he passed away. You know, and then war broke out. It was, you know, what a time. What a time. And there was a time in between 1924 and 1925 when 10 leading drivers lost their lives. And there was a race at Monza in 1933, the Milan Grand Prix, not the Italian Grand Prix, the Milan Grand Prix, a very, very similar race in terms of the people competing in the cars. 3 drivers killed in one race, in one afternoon. That's why, you know, whenever the subject of safety comes up, I always say motor racing can be as safe as it can possibly be. I'm a massive advocate for safety and always have been, because we have that historical perspective to think of. And I personally lived through a period of incredible danger in Formula One as well. And I never want to have to do that again. I've had enough of it. So yeah, all amazing heroes. Incredible to think that both Nuvolari and Caracciola lived well past their racing careers and died, if you like, natural deaths. Herman Lang too. Manfred von Braukitsch too. I mean, a lot of them did survive. Sadly not Bernd Rosemeyer, who lost his life on a speed record attempt on the German Autobahn for Auto Union. And there were many others, you know, that we lost much too soon. Anyway, there we are. I'm going to finish again with that little Madrid music, just to remind you of how I think nicely they're doing the music side of Formula One these days. And then we'll go to the ending. So a big thank you to everybody again for taking part and your questions. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. And actually, I don't think it'll be next week. I think I've got something on next Wednesday, but watch this space. I'll definitely, if it's not, it'll be a Tuesday or a Thursday, probably the Thursday. But it may even be the Wednesday. I don't know. Diary's a bit confused at the moment. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks to Jetcraft. Thanks to Pitbox for their support of this. You take safe and stay safe, and see you soon.